Hello and welcome to the MLB DFS on the RotoRadar Podcast. My name is Joshua Riemer, joined by none other than the man, the myth, the legend, Jared Block. Jared, how are you doing on this fine Thursday afternoon, sir?
Doing well, man. I wish I could say that I was better from last night, but I am not. So we're talking baseball today and strictly baseball, right? Because that's
Yep.
actually, you know what? I'll say it. I'm okay with saying that I don't care about the NBA anymore. It's officially NFL season.
Yep, I understand it, man. That was tough. That was definitely a tough one to watch for you guys. Tough one to watch for my guys. Not saying that it was as tough as your guys, but hey, sometimes it happens. It is what it is. We move on to baseball. It's not NFL season just yet, but it definitely is MLB season. We get to talk all about that today. Only 5 games on the slate. Should be a pretty easy podcast when it's all said and done. I should be able to get out of here a little bit quicker than usual too. So, Jared. Did okay last night. Didn't get the win on FanDuel. I was shocked to see a lot of the field end up going to Steven Matz. That was
Yep.
the cheap pitcher that everyone ended up jumping on, and I just didn't think it was that good of a spot. He did okay. He did well enough for the industry, and that kind of kicked us out of things. Our Oakland stack didn't come through as nearly as much as we wanted them to,
Yep.
but Angels did. We certainly got a few calls right on the show, so it still felt like a good. Still felt okay. Got the win over on DraftKings, which is good, but wanted to get the win on both sides. Looking to rectify that today with a nice little small Thursday slate.
Yeah, I know that DFS fell short still, though. 6 wins in the last 8 days, and we got a really strong night on Prize Picks. The five flex entry ended up cashing, going 5 for 5. And then we also had an underdog slip that cashed a 3 pick. So still pretty solid night overall. I mean, you're not going to win every one. With the smaller slate yesterday, we kind of thought that we'd be not boxed into a corner necessarily, but one of those things where I think the pitching conversation went the opposite direction yesterday, and it's been a thing. It's maybe continuing today. We'll see how it goes here. We have a lot of really strong pitching options to choose from today. So let's go ahead and break those down here. Again, for everybody listening, feel free to like and subscribe to the channel, as well as giving any comments, concerns, anything else in the actual feed, and we'll get to it as we go along here. 6:40 Eastern time is going to be the first game. So if you're playing DFS, just note that there's an early lock time today for today's 5-game slate. Let's start off talking about it. Baltimore, Detroit is first on the board here. Right now, the Orioles are coming in as a -154 money line favorite here behind Kyle Gibson. The Tigers, Wentz, +130 at home. 8 is the total for this one. The weather here, 57 degrees. The wind is blowing in from left field at 9 to 10 miles an hour here. Lack of offenses on the slate just in general because of all the awesome pitching options, but I do think that we should start talking about this Orioles team who has a lot of switch hitting, who has a lot of righties that hit lefties pretty well. Wentz being a southpaw is going to have one of the worst xFIPs on today's slate. So where does Baltimore rank for you?
Yeah, I think they have to rank pretty high. You can very well say that Wentz is one of the worst pitchers on the slate. We've seen his performances so far this year. Not a lot of good. He also just faced off against this team, so we know that it's going to be a good spot for Baltimore. Getting to see a pitcher for the second time in just about a week. They teed off against him in that first time too. So really like this spot for Baltimore. I think I'm willing to load up here and get as much exposure as I possibly can to this Baltimore team and potentially have them up there as that top stack today.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that there are 4 teams that need to be really heavily considered today. And I think that Baltimore should rank near the top of that. We'll talk about maybe some troll spots here over some of these teams. A team that's let down over the past several days in the Mets is on the slate as well, and that's going to be pretty highly owned. So we have a lot to discuss on it, but I think that Baltimore needs to be highly considered, and I think people will be on them today in terms of DFS, but I don't think that they'll be on them enough. And I would like to see, do we have this lineup yet? I kind of want to see where they put guys like Mullins, guys like, I know that Hayes is dealing with an injury, so it'd be interesting to see what their lineup looks like.
They have not given us the lineup yet.
Yep. I would maybe assume that maybe a guy like McKenna becomes a really interesting, intriguing leadoff option. But I think that I would like guys like Ramon Urias, sadly Rutschman, potentially Ryan Mountcastle, but you might have to play 2 Orioles on FanDuel, one of them in utility, one of them at the first base spot. it'll be interesting to see how that all shapes out. But I think that we can feel pretty confident where they're at today.
Yep, I agree.
All right, on the other side here, we have the spot for Kyle Gibson coming up against Detroit. It's a situation where this Gibson spot just occurred on the 22nd. So no less than 5 days ago, he ended up going 6 1/3, getting that quality start, getting the win, striking out 11, and only giving up 2 hits, one earned run. So are we? And I say, at the beginning, there's a lot of really strong pitching options. I think that you can consider quite a few of them for tournaments and just overall prop plays in general. When it comes to cash, it does feel like there's 2 really main options here in Garrett Cole and this Kyle Gibson spot. How are you kind of ranking those two? Because it does feel like we'll need all the bats we can get today as well.
Yeah, I think they're both good options. I like the Kyle Gibson spot a little bit more. That Rangers team is solid against righties, so I'm not sure if I'm all that excited about that Garrett Cole spot. But this Gibson spot makes a ton of sense. Detroit, one of the worst teams against right-handed pitchers in the league. We just saw him pitch excellently against this team, so I think it can happen all over again. It's in Comerica. It's cold in Detroit right now, so it's going to be a really good pitching environment.
Agreed. I also think that on DraftKings, it's a pretty steal price tag for Gibson here, 7,400. I think you're going to have to lock him in at SP2. So that's kind of how today works out. Let's take a look at some props here because I'm not interested in any Detroit bets. There's no real reason to go to it on a 10-game or a 10-team slate. So the Gibson number on Prize Picks, you're going to get it at 31.5 pitcher fantasy score. I think that's pretty solid. I could even get behind a strikeout number at 5. Like normally we say 5 pitcher strikeouts is kind of a hook number or a push number. This doesn't feel like it. It feels like you're pretty safe here, even with them seeing him 5 days ago.
Yeah, I would agree. I like this number. I think it's solid. I don't want to necessarily lean on it too much, but I think it is good enough to where I could potentially take it in a 5-pick or something. But yeah, that's about it here. I think for this Orioles team, in terms of their hitters props, spelled Orioles wrong in here, but here we go. Don't mind taking Mateo, hits, runs, RBIs. He's been red hot recently. He's been stealing bags a ton. So I like that hits, runs, RBIs number. He should be set up in a really good spot today. Santander, hits, runs, RBIs, definitely solid too. And really like the Mountcastle 7-hitter fantasy score too. He's probably my favorite hitter on this team, Ryan Mountcastle.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to mention in passing, now that you brought up Mateo here, he's going to come in really, really expensive on FanDuel. Now it is warranted, obviously, but it's just kind of weird to see that jump all the way up there. DraftKings is a way better price at 44, but do you have, or I guess not do you have, because I think you do have the money regardless today, even with the top tier pitching options, that guy going to be left off your table even if he hits leadoff? Or
probably, and he's not going to hit leadoff. They must have just came out with the lineup. He's in the 8 hole, so
well, that's a bummer. Okay,
yeah, he's usually not hitting high in the lineup. He's there to set up the top of the order. Oh wait, no, sorry, he's hitting in the 6 hole. My bad.
We do have Mullins hitting leadoff today, so that's interesting there. Yeah, I was it's because Hayes is hurt, so they kind of have to do something else with that, but at least they could have maybe put McKenna up there. Anyway, Rutschman's Mountcastle, Santander, 2, 3, 4, and then Urias is in the 5 hole. So I like all those guys. Not so much on Mullins though.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's go ahead and move on. Talk about the next spot here. The next game on the slate is Tampa Bay and the Chicago White Sox right now. The Rays are coming in as a -154 money line favorite on the road behind Shane McClanahan, Dylan Cease. White Sox +130. 7 is the total for this game. The weather in Chicago, 56 degrees at guaranteed rate. Wind is blowing in tremendously here, 10 to 12 miles an hour. From left, big bump to these pitchers, and there are already 2 really good pitchers to begin with. So is this a situation just overall? I think we can kind of cross this one off from a bats standpoint on a 5-game slate with a low total like this and the wind blowing in Chicago. But are you interested in any of these pitching options?
Yeah, I love the McClanahan spot. I think you're getting an elite pitcher against a team that doesn't put up very many good bats against left-handed pitching. They have a lot of high strikeout guys. if you look from the 3-hole up until the 7-hole, everyone has above a 20% K rate. You have some guys getting into the 30% range, and even a guy like Luis Robert, who so far this season has been very hit or miss. Either he's going to hit the ball really well against a lefty, or he's going to strike out in bunches against a lefty. So I could see McClanahan getting a lot of Ks. We just saw him in this spot last week, got 10 strikeouts against them. A little bit of a disadvantage because he's facing off against them the second time in a row. But I think that's kind of mitigated by the fact that you're in guaranteed rate field, which is already pretty pitcher friendly, and you have the wind working in your favor, and it's really cold in this environment. I think McClanahan could deal here. I think you see McClanahan beat out Cole at the end of the night. I think that's probably my hot take, because I think a lot of people will just end up going Garrett Cole instead.
I love that conversation. We'll get to Garrett Cole at the last game of the slate, but it's just been a tried and true thing. Most MLB slates that Garrett Cole's on, people just don't pay attention to the rest of the slate. So most times that works, but I think today maybe we see that not work as much point per dollar. Also, just a note on the McClanahan stuff, I know he has a smaller sample size to lefties this season anyway, but I wanted to just at least note that 96 plate appearances to righties, he's striking out 34% of them. It's a huge number, no matter where you look at it. So, I think that the White Sox are a team that you can target today. Again, no interest in any of the bats here. I'm going to stay away from the. We'll talk about Cease here in a second, but I think we can take a look at McClanahan momentarily when we look at props. Any interest in the spot for McClanahan before I move over to Cease in terms of DFS play? Maybe he's an SP1 on DraftKings.
Yeah, I think it's a good SP1. I think it's solid if you wanted to go there. I would say probably SP1 is where I would lean.
All right. And then are you taking Gibson heads up over McClanahan on a one-pitcher site?
Yeah, I think I am. I think I'm leaning Gibson. I just checked. Gibson got a really good ump today. Like he got Lance Barrett, so one of the better pitching umps in the MLB. McClanahan got a guy who hasn't seen a lot of games, so not a lot of sample size there. I think I am going to lean Lance Barrett at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Or Lance Barrett,
Right. I know what you meant. $1,000+ difference on FanDuel as well. It's not close on DraftKings, and it doesn't really have to be because of the price difference and the ability to get two pitchers. But I just wanted to know one more thing before we move to props here and the Dylan C spot. It's a situation where, ironically, the favored pitchers in Kyle Gibson and McClanahan are both the exact same number at -154 money line favorites, and Cease is the exact underdog as Wentz here at +130. So I would side with this by saying I think that Gibson has a better chance of just winning in general. And I think that, McClanahan could pitch 6 or 7 really, really tight innings and then still lose this game. So that's kind of where I lean with that one.
Yeah, for sure. I could see that happening.
On the C side, this season specifically, still has 110 rough plate appearances here. 4.53 xFIP. The K rate is at 28% collectively. Ground ball rate's working out for him really well. I guess the one downside is that he's giving up a lot of hard contact to right-handed bats. And I think that he's just going to get a lot of lefties today. So how do you kind of work that out for the C spot?
I mean, I'm not interested in this spot. I think Rays have an advantage with how good this team is in terms of hitting. They have a lot of hard contact in this lineup. And they do have a lot of talented right-handed bats too, right? Like they're going to have Yandy, Randy, and Harold Ramirez all in the top 5 of the lineup. That's 3 righties that could take it to Dylan Cease. So I'm staying away from the C spot. I'm not interested in this spot at all.
Yeah, I'm on the same side as that as well. Let's go ahead and focus on props now. You get the Shea McClanahan number on Prize Picks, a 40.5, which really kind of I guess sets the bar or puts a bigger scope on it. If you look at the Gibson number too, I just think that maybe they're undervaluing Gibson. I think is where I want to go with this because these guys are in relatively same spots, right? I mean, you could say the Gibson spot is much better in a lot of ways. I mean, I don't know. I think that both of them are good. You don't really need to compare numbers necessarily. I just thought it was interesting that you're going to get Gibson's fancy number at like 8 points lower overall. So that's kind of what I wanted to touch on there. Yeah, that's kind of it. Do you have anything to add here?
Nope, nothing to add.
Alrighty. Let's move on and talk about the next game here. Got 3 more to go. Washington, the New York Mets are next. Nationals +198 behind Trevor Williams. Mets, the minus 240 money line favorites here behind Lucchesi. 8.5 is the total for this game. The weather for this one, 54 degrees, winds blowing right to left, so nothing too crazy here at 5 to 8 miles an hour. And let's go ahead and focus on talking about this Williams spot going up against the Mets, who technically have the highest implied team total on the board. We've also just seen the Mets really disappoint against Nationals pitching the last couple days here. What are we going to do with the Williams spot? This is easily the best matchup the Mets have had the last couple days. Are we writing that? Because I kind of think we have to on a 5-game slate.
I mean, it's an
To a certain
okay
extent.
to a certain extent, I guess. He's not that bad of a pitcher, though, right? Like the ground, like this is one of those classic guys where his xFIP is in the fives, but it's mostly just because he's not really a K guy. He gets ground ball outs. He has a low walk rate, though. He limits damage. He's not getting a lot of strikeouts, but he's not giving up a lot of hard contact either. And in fact, he's inducing a good amount of soft contact. So I don't know if I'm all that excited about getting guys against him today. I think if you're going to go one route or the other, I would say you're looking for some power bats against him. So some righties would make sense considering he's giving up more power against righties. Looking for righties that can elevate the ball. So really not many in this lineup that can exactly do that. I don't mind Pete Alonso. I don't mind going to the lefties, but a lot of these lefties have really high ground ball rates. So I don't know. I'm not all that thrilled about this spot, in all honesty. I kind of like other stacks better, mainly Baltimore.
Right. Again, notating that the Mets spot in this series has been, I guess it hasn't really been a feature stack. We've seen it come and go. They've had high implied totals all week long, but they've disappointed tremendously all week long too. So maybe it's a matter of just them being cold as well. So I don't know. I'm willing to move them down the peg a lick or two, and that's kind of why I mentioned at the top of the show where like there's 4 teams that we really want to talk about here. I think the Mets actually do rank 4th on my list.
Yeah, I can get behind that quite a bit. Don't mind going that route. Yeah, they look cold right now, 100%. I mean, Mackenzie Gore did a good job of shutting them down last night. So, yeah, I'm kind of happy of staying away from this Mets team.
Yeah, we should expect massive ownership for here in DFS from a few guys. So
Let
could be
them.
a really huge leverage spot. Yeah, exactly. So let's go ahead and focus on the other side here and talk about the spot for Lucchesi going up against the Nationals. The Nationals have just had the number right now over the last couple days, and I know that doesn't really matter on a day-to-day basis, but 2.35 xFIP for Lucchesi over a very small sample size of 24 plate appearances. Looked pretty good to start out the year. Is there anything you're noticing here, and how he's going to react to this Nationals lineup that's been pretty pesky overall? Like the lineup that looks like it's going to be put out today looks like it's going to have a K rate of around 15 to 16%.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they have on the season right now, a 15% K rate against left-handed pitching. They're also ranked as the 10th best team in the MLB against left-handed pitching when it comes. It's very similar to Oakland, right? Like you can
Right.
somewhat attack righties against them, but left-handed pitchers against this team are not going to work out. And so I kind of expect Lucchesi to come back down to earth here. This is the guy who had a really good game against the Giants, but like I don't think that's him. I don't think he's turned it around completely. I think without the strikeout stuff, if he's going to give up a decent amount of damage here, so I wouldn't even mind getting some bats in this lineup. Like I think it might be a spot where you can get a cheap leadoff hitter in Alex Call, you can get a cheap hitter in Candelario. You're looking for guys who can hit lefties in this lineup. They don't really have a lot of them, but even Joey Menzies is someone that I would potentially consider. I don't mind getting some action here and potentially getting a really cheap one-off or a really cheap mini stack here from Washington.
Yeah, I certainly don't mind it. I mean, you just gotta kind of get what you really, really want here, and we'll talk about some of those spots coming up here and go from there. Yeah, I think this actually is another game that Washington could win, and feel pretty good about that take, even with them being the biggest underdog on the board. So, let's go ahead and I guess we'll touch. Do you want to touch on any props here? I'm not really super interested.
No, neither am I. I'll stay away.
All right. Next game, Kansas City, Minnesota. Right now, the Royals are coming in as a plus 172 moneyline underdog behind Zach Greinke. Malley for the Twins, a minus 205 moneyline home favorite. The biggest favorite, or the second biggest favorite, I should say, on today's slate. 8 is the total for this game. The weather, I guess, slightly concerning. I know that our friend Kevin Roth here says that there's going to be showers, but the bulk of it should stay north of the stadium. Maybe there's a little bit rain here involved, but we should expect this game to play. According to him, are you seeing the same thing? And if so, I mean, you got to take a look at Minnesota here. I think that they are a top 2 stack.
Really? I'm not into targeting against Zach Greinke this
Yeah, so
season.
yeah, here's the thing. Like we get this a lot. We're gonna say this matchup like 10 times this year, or maybe not 10, but 5 at least. So I know that I'm not like maybe I should have just said I don't like the team stack, but I do think that there's many stacks you can consider.
I just disagree, man. I'm just not on this team in general. Greinke has not
Yeah.
been bad this year. Like, yes, he's bad against some of these elite teams like Atlanta. Angels, to a certain extent, I think are somewhat of an elite hitting team. Texas, I think, is an elite hitting team as well. But like when it comes to facing off against some of these lower end teams like the Twins, I could see him actually having some success. I mean, 4.4 xFIP is not bad to start out the year. Yes, the K rate is bad at 16%, but that's never been him. He's never been a high strikeout guy. The hard contact is decently high, but it's not anything that's like super noteworthy here. At the end of the day, if he's going to stay in control with the walk rate and have such a low xFIP, I kind of don't find a lot of interesting guys to target him with. If you want to give your case on someone, go for it. I'm more than willing to listen to it. I'm not interested in all that much against him today.
Yeah, I mean, at least this year, unless you disagree, feels like he's starting to be a little bit less reverse splits, at least to start the year. Uh, well, just to give the case on why I think he will. I think these Twins will be popular is because we did get. First of all, it's a 5-game slate. Second of all, there's not many offenses to take a look at. And third, you get Buxton and Correa extremely cheap, and we have leadoff Byron Buxton today. Now, we've talked, you and I, this weekend about how he has sucked this season. I guess starting to turn it around a little bit with home runs in 2 of the past 4 games. I could see maybe a year playing them as a blocker in this situation today. But again, I think there are pivots for some of these guys. If you wanted to lean with the theory that Greinke might not be reverse splits to start the year, I think Jorge Polanco makes some sense. He's been extremely hot, and I know that he just got back into this lineup to start the year, but you take a look at the last 3-4 games, and he's really found his groove. So I think that Jorge Polanco makes some sense as a one-off today. Probably a little bit. I mean, he's expensive, obviously, but I do think that it's something to take a look at least in passing. And from there, again, I think that it's kind of just those 3 guys, and that's kind of it for me. But it all depends on whether or not you think that he is leaning on the reverse split side like he normally would, or maybe we could take a look at something just today specifically.
I think so far throughout the season, it's kind of leaning towards that normal split. So I would say you want lefties against him, not really wanting righties. I don't know, man. Just a lot of up in the air stuff here with this Twins team. And you add in the rain factor. Like, isn't it pretty cold here in Minnesota, if I remember correctly?
The weather says it's
Oh, okay.
66.
Not that cold.
Today's a
Not
warmer day. It'll be colder tomorrow.
Yeah, not cold enough to where it's a big deal. I don't know. I don't think they delay it, or I don't think they end up postponing, so I don't think that's a big deal. But you could see Greinke end up getting delayed here and then end up getting pulled out for a bullpen arm. And that would be at least somewhat concerning to go up against all these bullpen arms rather than going up against Greinke himself. So Royals bullpen hasn't been great, so maybe it's a little bit of a benefit if he does get delayed out. I just think there's so much in the air with this one, up in the air with this one, that I'm not really all that interested.
Yeah, they just don't really have too many lefties in here in general.
Yeah.
And I'm not really looking to target Joey Gallo today. Larnach has pinch hit risk always. So I don't know. Again, I'll stick by my Polanco take, and that's kind of it. But again, a situation where I think people will 100% roster a Buxton Correa pairing. Usually that's what it is. And considering how cheap they are on FanDuel, I could see that being just through the roof 80% today on a small slate. So just throwing that out there. And I think that it's a good pivot spot in general.
Yeah, for sure.
On the other side, we have this Malley spot against the Royals. Somewhat similar concerns in terms of the actual weather itself and how the game plays out. But you have this Royals team striking out at 26% to this handedness over the course of the season. And you have Malley doing a pretty good job pretty much of everything here. He's a high ground ball rate to righties, and then the fly ball rate with limiting hard contact to lefties. So could set up for a pretty nice spot for him overall. It's just there is risk compared to the other pitchers on the slate because of this weather.
Malley would be that dude for me if this wasn't a rain spot. I mean, the spot sets up so perfectly. If you look at the reverse splits tendency so far this year, he's done really good against lefties. There's going to be 6 lefties in the lineup. The righties that are in this lineup are Franmil Reyes, Hunter Dozier, and Bobby Witt. Bobby Witt's fine, but Franmil and Hunter Dozier have both been awful against right-handed pitching this year. I think Malley would have been probably the nuts today. It would have been a really good pitching spot, but that rain's going to keep me away. This is my if you have balls play. If you have balls, you'll play Tyler Malley tonight and just pray that he doesn't get rained out.
Yeah, I like the spot. I'm just intrigued now that his okay, we're getting a 6 pitcher strikeout number. That seems really attainable. Again, these are based on if the game can get through what it needs to get through. I also think a really sharp take today is taking the Nerfy. I haven't looked at the model, but just based on what we've talked about the last couple minutes, I do think that an under for the first inning runs allowed, will hit in this spot. So I know it's always sweaty. We were on the luckier side yesterday, and it was never really a sweat when we took that for the people who had the all access package, but definitely could look at that today. 34.5 pitcher fantasy score also seems doable, although there is risk with, quality start win situations here.
Yeah, for sure.
Other than that, I don't really have much to add to the table. They don't have any good Jorge Polanco props, which is the only guy I really wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I'm not interested in anything else for this one. It's a tough one to get interested in.
All right. New York and Texas is the nightcap here, 8:05 p.m. Eastern time, first pitch. Right now, the Yankees are a -176 money line favorite on the road behind Garrett Cole. And then we have Andrew Heaney on the mound for the Texas Rangers, a +148 money line underdog at home. 7.5 is the total. And for this one, I think that obviously, like we mentioned earlier in the podcast, people will just see Garrett Cole on the slate and they will click his name and then move on for the rest of their builds. I would say it's not as simple as that, and I think we've already alluded to that. But just to put more context on it, 20% K rate, 2 right-handed pitching for Texas, and that's even without having Corey Seager in the lineup today. So what did you see from Cole's last start against Toronto, and how do you feel that he's going to carry over today?
Yeah, I think it should be I don't know. I have struggled saying that this is going to be a really good start for him. We've seen this Texas team do really well against right-handed pitching. They're currently the second best team in the MLB when it comes to their weighted runs created above average. Cole's been elite, don't get me wrong. I mean, he's been great at limiting guys at the plate, but like this isn't a heavy strikeout team necessarily. Lots of low K rates throughout. There's some higher K rates at the bottom of the lineup, but you're seeing a lot of guys under 20% in this lineup. So I don't know. I think Prize Picks did a great job of putting out that 6.5 number. I'm not sure it's going to be the easiest to attain, even with it being discounted from 7.5. And we've already seen some struggle spots of him going up against teams that don't strike out all that much, like Cleveland, like Toronto, and him falling short in terms of his strikeout numbers. So I think it could be a good spot. I think he still could go deep. I think he could still limit damage somewhat, but it's not worth paying up all the way for an $11,000 pitcher. He's certainly not worth that today against such a good hitting team.
Yep, I agree. I think point per dollar is the key word there. And I think that people, like I said, will just do it because of name recognition. There's also a Prize Picks taco in play. I think it's still available on the board, so we can talk about that. You and I sat down. I mean, the picks are already out. We're currently sweating it. We chose Ohtani over Cole today. You want to give any other explanation regarding that?
Oakland sucks a lot more than this Rangers team does. I think that's as simple as it gets. Like I mentioned, I think Prize Picks did an amazing job of putting out this Cole number in terms of their business, because I think it's a trap all the way. He could definitely do it, right? He's a very good pitcher. He's pitched very well so far this year, but I think more than likely he doesn't end up hitting that 6.5 number.
Yeah, it's a very enticing number, right? I mean, you also see that there's an 11% off right next to him in Shohei, and technically it's an 18% discount. But we've also seen, I believe it was the same thing that happened the last start, like where he was discounted somewhere. But anyway, um, or people just chased
He
it and
was
got super
discounted.
disappointed.
He was discounted against Cleveland. Remember, we were all on that. We were
Yes.
talking about that for like a few hours before the show, how it was a bad play, and I think this is the same exact thing. I think this is another really bad play.
Yeah, they do these things on purpose, guys.
Yeah.
So just it's part of the reason
Remember,
why
a
they're still
discount
doing
is
this.
not to help you guys out. It's to incentivize you to buy something. And that's the same
Yeah,
thing with these discounts.
exactly. All right. I think we can take a look at some Yankees batters now going up against Andrew Heaney. This Yankees team has one of my BVP plays on the board. I've already posted it, so you might have already seen it. But if you haven't, you want to take a guess on who that is today?
Is it DJ LeMahieu? I know
It
he has
is
some
DJ
BVP.
LeMahieu. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. This is my team that I like, man. I know like we've kind of been on the fence about the Mets and about the Twins and about all these stacks coming up to this, but I like this Yankees team quite a bit. One, you get them on the road, which I think is getting that guaranteed ninth inning is really important on these 5 game slates. Two, I think you just have a lot of righties that are setting up well against Heaney. I like the Volpe spot. I like DJ. I like Gleyber Torres here. Don't mind going to Aaron Judge, who hasn't been seeing lefties really well to start out the year, but could definitely regain some of that here. I think you have a lot of good righties that have a lot of good hard contact, and Heaney's taking a step back. And if he's going to let the ball fly, which it's what it seems like, the ground ball rate for him so far this year is 29%. If he's going to let fly balls go crazy against this Yankees team, it's going to be trouble.
Yeah, I think that again to start out, like take a look at we didn't really cover this, but the 4 teams, now that we can, are the 4 teams that we're interested in the most today. Baltimore, New York, Minnesota, and the New York Mets. Uh, those 4 teams, we don't like the teams that are, or don't like as much the teams that are in the higher implied total category. We like the other 2 a little bit more, and I think that that's kind of just gonna be how we're different today. I think that a lot of people will play Mets and Twins, and again, I like some of those spots, especially more in the Twins than the Mets. But the Yankees and the Orioles are how things are going to get different today. Now people will still be playing them, but they won't be as over leveraged to the spot. So I think the same thing doesn't really apply to props. It's just like picking and choosing your spots. We'd feel a little bit. I don't know. I'd be a little bit more nervous taking a Mets prop today than I would the other 2 teams. And just to get back on track here, the Yankees, love what DJ LeMahieu brings to the table today. Lifetime 6 for 12 with 5 singles and a home run. Only struck out twice, so love what he brings to the table. I know that he's probably going to end up batting cleanup today to kind of be in that Stanton spot. So definitely like that. And I think that just the top half of this Yankees order makes a lot of sense. I could also see you rostering the catcher for the situation as well and getting Trevino there. So definitely don't mind what the Yankees bring to the table. It does feel like a potential blow up spot.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think this is a good spot. What was I going to say? Oh, I don't know if it means anything to him. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but it is the spot where Judge hit 64. So maybe coming back to the park, he gets a
Sure.
little re energized and ends up, hitting really well here. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of upside in this stack. Even IKF at the bottom of the lineup has been hitting pretty solid so far this year. Cheap option, has some good BVP over his lifetime against Heaney here. So I don't even mind IKF at the bottom.
Well, that's the narrative. Kiner Falefa is the narrative.
Yeah, that's a good point.
He used to play for Texas and actually was well, obviously Texas was really bad then, and but he was like their guy, or he was a
Mhm.
very big fan favorite.
I wonder how he did on that series last year. We'll have to go look that up after the show. If Willie Calhoun plays too, that's another guy. They used to be one of those Rangers guys
Yep,
that
that's right.
at
That's
one
right.
time was a I don't know centerpiece necessarily, but a good player, and they
No,
let him
but like
go. So
top of the lineup guys, both of them actually,
yeah,
and just in on the bad side of teams. We used to play them a lot because they were usually extremely cheap and they could have some monster upside. So I don't know. I like the Yankees. I struggle saying that they are number 1. I would say that they're a close number 2 on in
I
terms of
would
teams.
agree. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's just I think it's clearly Baltimore number one. I'm shocked if anyone I don't understand how Vegas doesn't have them as the top implied run total team.
Well, yeah, I mean, there you go, man. That's
Maybe
what I'm
it's a
saying.
weather thing. I think it could potentially be a weather thing. That's the one thing that I think is really playing down this Baltimore spot is probably that it's cold and the wind's blowing in, and it's in Comerica, which is already a very pitcher friendly spot anyway. So maybe
Yeah.
that's what's helping. But the Mets Stadium, City Field is also pitcher friendly, so I don't know, and it's pretty cold there too. So the back and forth you can kind of see here. But yeah, like I said, small slate, kind of easy to get through. I don't have anything else. I don't really love props in terms of Yankees, or not a lot of them, but I like DJ LeMahieu, 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs.
Yep. Yep.
Uh, like Volpe, 7 fantasy score, or 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs. I think both of those are solid. Um, Judge has an 8.5 hitter fantasy score. I probably wouldn't take that, but IKF does not have a number. Never mind. I thought he did.
Glaber has a 1.5 HRR as well.
Yeah.
I can get behind some of those. But yeah, the LeMahieu one is the favorite for me as well. Yeah, I don't have much more to add here. I was gonna say maybe we take a look at like combination plays, but I'm not sure if it's necessary today. I think it's gonna be a smaller board for both DFS and for just props in general. Like we were nails on pretty much every call yesterday in terms of props, and the ones that didn't hit were either hooking or missed by one or two. So we feel really good about all that, and I just think that this is a spot today where you get your exposures where you want them, and you just enjoy the NFL draft. I think that's kind
Yeah.
of how today goes.
Yep, for sure. Completely agree. All right, Jared, let's get out of here. Any other final thoughts? If not, we can get on out.
Yeah, if you didn't catch the top of the show, we ended up hitting a 5 flicks on Prize Picks last night for the All Access package. We also hit an underdog 3 pick for the All Access package as well. And yeah, we're rolling 6 out of our last 8 in terms of FanDuel lineups and winning percentage there. So again, if you missed that at the top of the show, still a lot of action to go this season. We've had obviously kind of a rocky start. We'll be transparent to start the year, but that's kind of how we roll, and things really started to dial in about a week ago, and we feel really good about the spot. And baseball season, it's very long. You have to kind of take the days and slates as they come, and today is one of those where things are very clear cut. Although I think we still have a very monster edge on both the pitching and the stacks that are available to us. So we feel really good about where we're at, and you guys have to take chances in baseball. It's kind of the you can take chances in every major sport and every single thing that you do in terms of sports betting, but baseball is a pretty clear one where the data kind of tells the field where to go, and we kind of pick and choose our spots elsewhere, which is why we've kind of made the calls that we have today. Also, last thing, 6:40 Eastern time is the lock time for today. So just again, a heads up to everybody. But any final notes on like the differentiation of things?
Nope, I think we're all good. Let's get out of here, man. All right. Thank you all for listening. As always, my name is Joshua Reimer. Good night and good skill.